I'd just like to welcome everybody here to the first of our Mini Moot sessions at the iMoot. And so we're kicking it off with Scott Huntley, who's talking on Moodle and the Internet of Things Redux. And yeah, just like to thank everyone for joining in. And special shout out to the sponsors of the iMoot as well. So Pukunui, Blindside, VerVD, and iLight, who've put in there and made this whole thing possible. So, but without further ado, just like to hand over to Scott. Thank you, Scott, for your time, and looking forward to the session.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to be here. It's great to be here and kicking off iMoot16 Mini Moot. So my session is Moodle and IoT, or can you lose Moodle and your sofa cushions? So who am I? My name is Scott. Some people might know me as Kenneth. That's the K in KS Huntley. That's not actually my name. So if you know me as Kenneth, there's your little hint there. You can go look me up. I work as a consultant trainer for Pukunui, which is an LMS hosting company. More than hosting, we also do other services as well, training. And I also work as an education support officer for Swizzy TAFE. And I'm actually at Swizzy TAFE today. I'm in my boss's office because I know that she's on vacation, and I came here before the rest of the team, so I'm worried that somebody's going to knock on the door. So I'm really glad that Swizzy is hosting me because their internet is a lot better than my internet at home. I'm also a dreamer. That's okay, because I'm not the only one. I spend far too much time thinking about how the world could be. And this has led me to an interest in the Internet of Things, or IoT. And specifically, I like to think about how IoT is going to change the world in general, but also how it's going to change the classroom. I'm also really good at bad Photoshop, which is why you've got me in the background there looking pretty terrible in that slide. So what is the Internet of Things? This is a term, it's a buzzword that's been kicked around for a couple years now. And people don't really know what it means. So just to define it, the Internet of Things is a thing connected to the Internet. That's not really a useful definition, but there is kind of like no real definition. It's kind of a fuzzy idea right now. Usually when we talk about the Internet of Things, what we're talking about is smart cities, smart buildings, smart bus stations, smart homes, smart garages, smart cars, smart fridges, all these smart things. And there are all these things that they promise us will happen in the future, but we don't have them yet, so a lot of people don't really care. We don't have this world where our refrigerator will order groceries for us. Or maybe we do, but most people don't. We don't have as connected a world as we imagine we do. We like to think of the future as something far away, something distant. And a lot of the times when you talk to people about the future, they go, look, it's 2016, I don't have a jetpack, I don't have a flying car, I can't go to the moon. And people say, we're not in the future at all. Well, I like to disagree. I think that the future has snuck up on us and past us, and we're in the future. We just don't realize it. Everybody talks about that we're not in the future. But if you think about it, I've got a device with me right now. This is a personal computer that I keep in my pocket, and I use to play Plants vs. Zombies. But if you think about this is a very powerful computer, and everybody's got one. Actually, probably these days, I've got 7 or 8 computers on me at any one time. Another example I like to say of why we're in the future is, remember this this cartoon right here, the Jetsons? And who was this robot? This is Rosie the robot, right? And what did she do? She went around the Jetsons' apartment, vacuumed. Well, we have that. We have that. It's a Roomba. It's a actual device that goes around and vacuums for you. We don't notice it. We don't recognize it as the future because we like to dress up our cats, put them on the Roomba, and have them chase ducks. That's kind of my idea, that the future has snuck up and bypassed us, but we use it for such mundane things, we don't necessarily realize we are in the future. So I like to reject that definition of smart cities, smart homes, smart buildings that are from the future. And I like to say that they're here and now, and they've arrived without us really noticing. Just the last weekend, my wife and I are looking at buying a house, and we are looking at new refrigerators. And I saw a brand new refrigerator that actually does have that internet connectivity, and it can connect to our local supermarket and start to order things. That refrigerator was very expensive, and my wife quickly said, "We're not buying that." But still, it's coming, it's arriving, it's here. We just don't necessarily notice it because it is so mundane. I also like to think about the definition of how we know we're in the future is 15 years ago. If I was at the supermarket and I saw something that was the brand name of what I thought my wife wanted me to buy, it wouldn't be practical for me to take a photo of it. These days, if I see like a brand of soup or a salad dressing, I'm like, is this the brand you're looking for? I take a photo and I text it to my wife, and she sends me back a message saying, yeah, that's it. If you think about 15 years ago, to do that, you'd have to take a film picture, burn off the rest of the roll, run over to the 1 hour processing, get them to process the photo, have it courier out to my wife, and then she sends me back. Well, I guess we did have phones and possibly we had SMS back then. But in 15 years' time, a ridiculous concept has become everyday. So when we talk about IoT, we can talk about a lot of devices. And one of the devices that I first started experimenting with was the microcontroller board. So there's this thing called Arduino, and that's probably the best known microcontroller board. It's definitely not the only one. Arduino, it's got an Italian name because it's designed by some Italian guys. And up in the north of Italy, they have a little bit of a IT Silicon Italy, or whatever they call it. And they had some real inventive IoT guys there. And they've designed this board. And you can build them smaller, but the advantage of the Arduino is it's this form factor because it allows you to actually play with it, to actually plug in cables and jumper wires to start experimenting with. So it's a board designed not for production, but for experimentation. It's open source hardware, which means that anybody can make a clone of it. They just have to download the blueprints or so forth, and anybody in China or anywhere in the world can make a clone. And it's open source, so it's not even like they're violating anything. As long as they don't violate the Arduino name, that's fine. It's often used for do-it-yourself projects. Like I said, it's designed around experimentation, and you can build some really cool stuff with it. So it's something that I really wanted to play with for a long time. And I was always a web teacher teaching HTML and CSS, and I thought I've got no business with hardware. And around 2014, so around 2 years ago, I just went out and bought my first set of Arduinos. I just went, you know what? I'm going to become a hardware guy. How hard can it be? So yeah, it turns out that one of my hobbies is not necessarily building things with Arduinos, but I actually like to buy them. And I have got a full spectrum, pretty much, of varying quality and authenticity. And if you take a look there, I actually have the red board, and I think I've got a red board with me today. So where's my camera? That's the red board by SparkFun. SparkFun's a great company in the States that does some great hardware. That was around $25, I think. $25 to $30 Australian. This one here, I've got it with me as well. This is a yellow one, some knockoff from China. It was only $5, which is really great. Shipping included. It just took like 3 weeks to get here from China. And the problem was, to get it to work with my computer, I had to actually download new drivers. And every website I went looking for, the drivers, was all in, I suppose, Mandarin. And so I was relying on Google Translate to help me figure out which drivers I wanted. I don't have the authentic Arduino with me today. It's probably somewhere kicking around the office, but I don't have it. This one here, this is a knockoff. It's similar to this one. So this one is I think I paid $15. and it's designed to look like an Arduino, like an authentic real Arduino, but it's not, because an authentic one will cost more like $35. So why would you buy an authentic if, well, this one is kind of illegal because it violates the trademark. Why would you pay the $35 to get an authentic Arduino? The reason is because they actually take that profit and they put it back into the Arduino Foundation. So they're designing new hardware. So these are all Arduino Uno boards, and they're coming out with new products. They've come out with the Arduino Zero, they've Leonardo, a number of other boards. So by buying a brand name, you're actually helping to have them innovate. And finally, I have the Arduino Metro there, and I don't have that one with me today. I do have one that I don't have on that graphic. This one here, the Funduino. I'm always chasing what's the cheapest Arduino I can buy, and I think this is the current record holder. I think I paid $2.30 for that. So I'm looking for one that's under $2, and I'll be very excited when I buy one under $2. I don't know why. It's just that I like the idea of they're getting cheaper and cheaper. You can, yeah, I like the idea that under $2 because that means I can actually buy enough for everybody in the classroom easily. What kind of things can you do with an Arduino? So Arduinos are really good for things like home monitoring. So I do have a friend, and he uses his Arduino to monitor his home brewing setup. So the Arduino actually is monitoring the temperature, and whatever else you need to monitor. I know temperature. I'm trying to think, what else do you need to do for home brewing? I'm not a home brewer, so I don't really know. But I know he's tracking all his key variables, probably carbon dioxide, maybe? I don't know. But he's got his Arduinos actually hooked up to a number of sensors inside his home brewing setup. So it will actually feed that out to a web page, and he can go check on it and check the status of his home brewing. Another one, I did mention that my wife and I are looking at buying houses. This house, because we're in Australia, everybody's got rainwater tanks. The house that we're looking at has got something like 44 gigaliters of rainwater tanks. Like it's a kiloliter. I don't know. It's an incredible amount of rainwater tanks because the people were gardeners and they've got these huge, giant rainwater tanks. And I was looking around, and there's actually somebody who's built a number of like rainwater tank monitoring devices using Arduino. And I was looking at those tutorials, and I was like, yes, I want that. I want to be able to log into my website and check and see what my rainwater tank levels are like on any given day. You can also do things like build a weather station. That's an old classic one. There's lots of tutorials out there about building your own weather station. Some other uses of it, anything that's like a really simple, quick or easy action, doesn't require too much computing. So somebody has actually out there built a gardening robot, and you think gardening robot, you think of something that is actually going to move around and stuff. It's not actually a mobile robot. It's like they laid the actual irrigation setup, and they've actually used the Arduino to do things like monitor the soil dryness and monitor the temperature, monitor the tie into weather APIs, and actually determine if it's going to rain or anything like that, frost levels, and it irrigates the garden automatically based on all of this. And again, that's something that I want to do, and I want to tie it into my rainwater tank sort of thing. In terms of that gardening stuff, just as kind of an aside, there are actually commercial IoT devices you can buy as well. You don't have to build everything yourself. And this is an example of a commercial one right here. So this one, this is actually something I bought here in Australia, $80. It's a Parrot Flower Power, and it actually has an if channel. You can actually tie this in, and it can do things like send you a tweet or send you an email, send you any kind of notification. This will actually measure in the garden bed, whatever I planted in, it will measure the soil dryness. It will measure the soil temperature. It will measure the actual sunlight being, this is a sensor up here, an IR sensor, how much sunlight the plant is receiving. So you can actually set it in your garden and actually get all these results. The reason why it's not in my garden is because we got a dog a couple months ago, and he's actually gone around and started digging up stuff, and we had to pull this out of his mouth one day. So we're waiting for him to calm down, be less of a puppy, and we'll put it back in the garden. So that was my first sort of experimentation, playing with Arduinos and microcontroller boards. I've actually included some of the code in here, and I don't expect you to read this. I know that this is going to be really hard to see on your screen, and I don't expect you to necessarily understand this. You can go take a look at the slides later on. If anybody knows any kind of like C programming or a programming language based on C, it's very much like that. So the other reason why I like these microcontroller boards is we have a class, I teach IT general, and these students, they're studying a range of IT topics. So some of the ones that come into the classroom are not very programming friendly. They don't want to learn to program. They just want to learn how to network computers. Maybe they just are interested in hardware. So we had sometimes a hard time teaching them programming. And it seemed to help that they could actually program actual real physical devices. So they could take the Arduino and actually make it do something like turn on lights. So for instance, we have this is a ring of lights that you could actually attach, and they're RGB LEDs. So just by having them like write a program where it's going to turn on these lights randomly, it actually helped them clue into programming easier than if it was something pure programming related. So I like this idea of using the Arduinos actually to teach any kind of STEM topics in the future. With that cohort of students, it worked a lot better than trying to go with pure programming. Does it come in purple? Yes, it does. Did I bring my purple one? Of course I didn't. It does come in purple. Purple is reserved for the Lilypad. Lilypad is actually a wearable one. So in that photo, you can kind of see that it's got kind of big holes right around there. That's because those holes are designed for you to actually use conductive thread to sew your circuitry. And I've got something here similar. This is the Adafruit Flora, which is the same idea. You would actually use it to sew, so I could build this into my shirt, and probably in my shirt pocket, I would sew the circuits out, and this would work really well with this one. I could actually make something that lights up all kinds of cool lights randomly. So that's some experimentation that I did, and it turns out that I actually prefer the wearable technology and sewing circuits more than the this one, because eventually you want to solder these, and I'm a little bit fearful of the solder because it seems like a one-time action, whereas with the sewing circuits, if I screw up, I can just tear out the thread, start again, and I've had to do that a few times with some of my projects. This is all cool and fine. Back to my question. Can you lose Moodle in your sofa cushions? Because so far I've been talking about all kinds of microcontrollers and stuff like that. Well, you can talk about single board computers. So the idea of a single board computer is something like the Raspberry Pi, and a lot of people have heard of a Raspberry Pi. I've got one right here that's in a case. If we really want to, in the mail 2 days ago, I haven't opened it yet, I got a new Raspberry Pi, so we can even do an unboxing here later today. Some people are really into this idea of watching people unbox devices. Raspberry Pi, I can buy it here in Australia for $67 from Core Electronics. That's kind of expensive. I know in other parts of the world it's a little bit cheaper. But what it is, it's a entire computer. This is a computer that will actually run Linux, and yeah, it's probably more powerful than some of my computers. Well, it is more powerful than my first computer. Certainly more powerful than my second computer when I first went to university. You can do some really cool stuff with the Linux operating system that comes with this. You can actually run OpenOffice. You can run the GIMP, which is an image editor. You can run Scratch, which is another way to teach kids programming. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with it. In order to get it started, you need an actual operating system, and that they actually come with an operating system called Noobs, new out-of-the-box software. And the idea of the Noobs is that it will actually allow you to download a real OS, so it's not really a full operating system on its own, as much as it's kind of like a platform to get you the next one. So most people actually download Raspbian, which is a form of Debian Linux. And you actually download it onto your hard drive, and that is a micro SD card. And that's usually what you put inside your phone, your mobile phone, to actually do the memory. Now, I've got an iPhone, you can't do that. But you would actually, for Android phones, put that in for your memory and so forth. What I love about that is, and look how tiny that is. Absolutely tiny. What I love about that is you can actually put on various different operating systems and then keep switching, like, so if you wanted to switch from Raspbian to another operating system, no worries. You just change the micro SD card, and that's swapped out. So what can you easily, quickly build? Some of the stuff that you can build, lots of tutorials online for like a TV box, so like a replacement for your Apple TV or something like that. Usually using Kodi or XBMC. You can, like, there are so many tutorials out there on how to build one of those. I've got one that's pretty cool. You can build a retro arcade gaming system using like RetroPie or PiPlay. So this particular one, I had it set up in my office at TAFE I actually had an Atari 2600 emulator just because my parents didn't buy me an Atari when I was a kid, and I said, yeah, well, I'm going to teach them. I'm going to build my own Atari in 30 years later. You can also do stuff like music or media streaming using Plex or Pi Music Box, or what's the other one? Mopedy. So you could actually have your Raspberry Pi stream out your music. So you've just got one media server, and to all your stereos across your house, if you've got multiple stereos, you can have this Raspberry Pi directing your media. What I'm going to do with my next one, this one here that I bought, I want to track what planes are overhead. I don't know why, but recently I've been very curious. Every time I see an airplane overhead, where is that going? What's its altitude? What's its airline? All that sort of stuff. And I actually use an app on my phone, and that's the Flight Radar app. You can actually become one of the Flight Radar monitoring stations using the Raspberry Pi software that they actually have on their website. And actually, what you actually use for the antenna is a TV. You know those TV plug-in things that you plug into your computer and you can receive TV. You can actually repurpose that to receive signals from the airplane transponders. And I love that idea. I don't know why. I don't know why I need to know what airplane is overhead, but I want to be part of that experiment. So I've bought this, and soon I'll be one of the tracking stations as well. You can also do something sneaky with you build something called an Onion Pi, which is the Onion router, Tor. Build it into your Pi, and then you tap all you put that right before your router, and all your internet traffic in your home actually gets run through this Onion Pi router. So if you're really worried that the NSA is tracking you, or the whatever secret services in your country, you can build one of these and you can anonymize your internet traffic. Lots of those tutorials all online. You can go play with that. So the Raspberry Pi, yeah, that's kind of small. Can you lose that in your sofa cushions? Probably not, because you still need to put in, like, the monitor, and you could get wireless, but they've got like a Ethernet port there, all that. I don't know if I could lose this in my sofa cushions, but you probably could if you had a Raspberry Pi Zero, and this is a Raspberry Pi Zero, so it's teeny tiny. But that's still a pretty good computer. I could give you numbers. Numbers are meaningless. Look them up. I'll put in links back on my course page. But the Raspberry Pi Zero is still a pretty powerful computer. Not really one that I really want to run a lot of heavy applications on. But for really simple stuff like the media server or the TV box, you could run that on the Raspberry Pi Zero. So can you run Moodle on this? Yes, you can. I have done so, and it was a very painful experience, but you can. You can actually use this as a web server. Moodle would be a powerful one or a painful one, but if you wanted like a simple static web server, yeah, no worries. And yeah, it does come with a USB, tiny micro USB. You can't even really see that, no matter how close I bring it. So it's got like a micro USB port, and yeah, so that's where you'd have to plug in the keyboard and all this, and you're still like, there's no wireless. Well, I actually backed a Kickstarter called the Pi Zero Hat, and Pi Zero IoT Hat, and that's actually Bluetooth and Wi-Fi all together. So once I get over my fear of soldering, I can actually put these two things together, and that's my fully connected Wi-Fi computer. Now I know that you're thinking, oh well, you still need like a monitor. Not true. I could run it headless, so I could actually run it so that every time I want to actually access the board, I'll just VNC into it, and that way I don't need a keyboard. That way I don't need a monitor. No problem. Well, I still need a power source. Hang on. I've lost my power source. Yeah, no problem. I can just use one of these. Handy. I picked this up in New Zealand at the New Zealand Moot. They gave me the power to actually run my Raspberry Pi Zero because that's a phone bank charger. That's got enough power, enough amps to actually run this computer. So these things together, that's small enough that I could probably lose that in my sofa cushions. So can you lose Moodle in your sofa cushions? Of course you can. Some other things that I'll show you before I get to this slide. I don't really have slides for them, but this right here, this is one of my favorite boards. This is the Dudu Neo, and that's another Kickstarter that I backed. That yeah, it was a very good board. This one's actually a combination of these two types of computers. So this is a Raspberry Pi sort of clone, but it's also got built into it the Arduino. So you can actually do best of both worlds. You can do Arduino and you can do Raspberry Pi, and it's also got sensors built into it, so it can actually measure like altitude and not altitude, but like direction. Like it can tell that I'm holding it up and down, or it can tell that I'm holding it level and stuff like this. So if you're going to build a robot, this is a really good one to start with because you've got a whole lot of sensors built into it. Really, it's one of my favorite boards. I'm trying to remember how much it was. Dudu Neo. Take a look at their site. I think it's in the range of 60 US, which is, it's expensive, but it's not too bad. This one here, a lot cheaper. This is the Pine A64, and this is actually an A64 Plus. This is another Kickstarter that I backed. It took them forever to actually fulfill the Kickstarter, but I'm really happy with the actual product. It was one of those Kickstarters that their success almost killed the project because they had so many people placing orders. This is a really powerful computer, probably more powerful than the Raspberry Pi. You can definitely run Moodle on this one. It's bigger, but yeah, you can actually run quite a bit of really powerful stuff. I didn't get the wireless one, so I had to go buy a wireless thing for this, but that's not a big deal. This $19 US, and that's the powerful version. You can actually get the cheaper one, $15 US, and that's a pretty kick butt computer for that cost. You can also get things like the Omega Onion, which is teeny tiny. That actually runs Linux. I haven't really played with this one too much, but it's again, we're getting smaller and smaller computers. I've got another one. Where did I put it? The chip, and I'll have to unbox this later. I didn't realize this one's still sealed. The chip computer, and I do have a version here. That's about the size of it. That's another $15 computer that you can actually have up and running, doing all kinds of powerful stuff. So what I like about all this, the prices of these computers are dropping. The single board computers are dropping lower and lower and lower. So To me, this is the perfect storm of crowdfunding meeting the Alibaba sort of ability for makers in China, the chip producers in China, to meet this crowdfunding model of Kickstarter, and they're building these cheaper and cheaper single board computers. It's at the point where computers are being distributed on magazine covers, and this one right here, the Raspberry Pi Zero, when it first came out, it was distributed on magazine cover in the UK. I predict that you could, well, computers are disposable now. If you're talking about computers being distributed on magazine covers, to me that's a disposable computer. I predict that in a few years we'll be buying computers out of vending machines. It's going to be that sort of cheap. I don't know if people actually produce those vending machines, but it will be in the realm of you could do that. Think about your first computer. How much did you pay, and what kind of process was it to actually buy it, and everything like that? And think about the idea of buying a computer on a magazine cover. That, to me, that blows my mind. We've produced computers that are disposable. The hardware is disposable. So I like to think of it this way. This is what they told us the future would be. Here's Mr. Spock. Hey, computer, tell me what's going on the Enterprise today. And if you remember back the old Star Trek, they had one computer, and that was the computer for the ship. I think that's not how the future is going to be at all. The future is going to be like this. On the Starship Enterprise, there's going to be a computer in Picard's artwork. There's going to be a computer in Picard's desk. There's going to be a computer in Picard's couch. There's going to be a computer in Dr. Crusher. There's going to be a computer in the carpet. These kind of computers are so small and cheap, and they're going to get more and more so. You'll have computers everywhere. We used to think it was going to be all these sensors wired to one computer. Now I'm saying, no, they're just going to say cheaper and cheaper, smaller and smaller. We might as well just put a full computer everywhere. And if you really wanted to, you could rip up the carpet and run Photoshop on your computer and your carpet. It would be kind of slow, I imagine, but you could. So, yeah, if you think about it, your first computer that you took to uni or TAFE or whatever, it was only a short time ago. No, it was actually probably longer than you forgot. But that first computer, I'm thinking back to mine, it was probably $2,000, somewhere in that order. The Raspberry Pi, $5 computer. That's a lie. It's not $5. It was actually £5 in the UK, and when you convert it, it's not $5, and so forth. But the Pine 64 is $15 US. And I have seen an Indiegogo campaign by people in Brazil. They're trying to build a $1 computer, $1, and the entire idea, because they're in Brazil, they're looking for that developing world. They want to actually produce these computers and distribute them to kids in the developing world. It's hardware cheap enough that we're going to be able to teach programming to any kid on the planet. And I think that that's really cool stuff. Either that, or I came here today just to show off my Raspberry Pi Zero. And that's it. I've got lots of toys, but I'm going to throw it open to questions because I've been talking for 35 minutes. So I'd love to hear your guys' experiences. I'd love to hear, I know some people out there have an interest in this stuff. If we want to, we can actually even talk about, look, this one I just got literally last night and I haven't even opened yet. This is the Arduino, and I've written a blog post on it, so I'm going to be very excited to review this later today. So sometime in the middle of the iMoot proceedings, I'm going to pull it out of its package and actually start playing with it. All kinds of cool toys. Throw it open. Anybody have a question or a comment? So Gareth, you're saying you run Kodi and a Git server on yours for Moodle development on your Raspberry Pi? Is that a Raspberry Pi 3? Raspberry Pi B+. Oh, wow. So that's probably a couple years old by now, but that's yeah, the B+. Cool stuff. Oh, okay. So the price of the Udo was $50. Yeah, I think I was thinking in terms of by the time I paid shipping and so forth. Udo is a great it's a great company. They've got another Kickstarter coming out. The what is that called? The name of it, the X86. Yeah, I backed that one, and that's going to be a really powerful computer. That's like $250, but it can run up to 3 monitors. And I was just like, oh wow, that looks like a totally. So I didn't tell my wife. I backed the Kickstarter, and yeah, she saw the credit card charges, and she's like, "What is this?" Well, but still, I think that yeah, a computer that um, is going to be like my desktop replacement for $250 US. I'm like, that's pretty cool. You use Arduino Nanos in class. Oh, okay. What's the okay? The Nano is the little small form factor ones, right? Is that what you're talking about? But it's still an Udo clone, I believe, or it runs similar to Udo. Either that or similar to Leonardo. Yeah, €2 each from China. So how much is the euro right now? Still, yeah, we're talking like the $5 Australian mark. That's pretty good. Yes, maybe. Yes, fits on a breadboard. Yes, yes. So yeah, it's going to fit on one of these. Yeah, I've got. I don't actually have a brand name one. It's been a while since I bought one of those ones, but yeah, and it would fit on a breadboard, and you could actually then take your cables here out of the breadboard and onto various. So I brought some things with me. So this one here is a sensor that actually senses how close you are to something, ultrasonic. So it's just got these four little tiny, can't even really see them, four little tiny prongs, and you would just plug that in there to your breadboard, and then you could wire it all up to your Arduino Nano. Cool stuff. Another one that I brought with me today. This is the light blue bean. Trying to catch the light here. Light blue bean, and this is the light blue bean plus. It actually comes with its battery here. I haven't had a chance to play with this one either. I bought it because I bought the original light blue bean, and I was so impressed with that. It was an Arduino clone, but it actually had built-in Bluetooth, so you could program it, connect it up to your phone, and you could do all kinds of crazy stuff. I used it to make I had a tie using one of these, and I connected the Flora to the light blue bean, and I could actually make my tie light up based upon like what I was pressing on my phone. Do I have more computers than I have socks? If we consider a microcontroller board a computer, then yes. If not, I would say probably more socks than. Does two socks count as that's a pair, right? Are you asking individual socks or pairs? I literally, if I had to think about it, the Arduino clones, I would guess I've got around 40. If I had to think, Raspberry Pi type microcontrollers, I probably have around 20. Uh, that's a scary thought. Yeah, this is another one. This is the what is this? The particle photon. And what's cool about this is it uses Wi-Fi, so similar to the light blue bean, but with Wi-Fi, so you can actually connect that up. A little bit hard, and I've got its protective case here. If I take it off, those are the actual pins. And again, a lot of people would put that into the breadboard to actually start programming and stuff like that. And it's got a phone app with it as well, so it's a really good one. But that's so hard to actually sort of build into anything. And because I do like building wearables, I actually went out and got one of these. This is, remember I was talking about the electronics that you can sew? That's actually a case to hold one of these. So I actually would put this into that, and I'm not going to actually put it in there, but you would actually put it inside there, and then you'd be able to sew that into the back of your shirt or whatever like that. So I'm going to a tech festival at the end of this month, and if I have time, I'm going to wire up a Hawaiian shirt so that it will light up based upon. I'll probably do it because that you can connect this to an if channel. I'll probably do it based on something like a hashtag. So if somebody tweets with a hashtag, it'll make my shirt light up. That's the plan. I'm going to have to find some time to do it though. So, and I'm very aware that my boss is still in the room. Well, one of my bosses. So when I say, "Oh yeah, I'll just take a couple days off work," they won't even notice while I do this. I better not say that. Come on, somebody must have a. I know this is early in the day, first session, but there must be more questions, comments, ideas, thoughts, hates, complaints, problems. If anybody actually wants to ask an actual question on the mic too, please feel free. What do I find is the most engaging for my beginner students? That's a really good question. To actually sort of get them interested in all this, like when we go to set up, it's been a while since I've actually moved jobs from working as a teacher. When we used to actually set up the booths to advertise our school, we used to take the Raspberry Pi and the Atari 2600 emulator, just because it was such a visual sort of, and students would come over and they want to play the games, even though the games are from, God, 30 years ago now. So that was sort of like the open the door, hey, this is what we do at our school. In terms of the actual engaging with the students, I found, as I said, the programming on the Arduinos, that was something where they could actually, I was having a hard time getting through to them. For some reason, to me, what was always exciting was building, using a programming language like PHP to actually see a change in a web page or JavaScript or something like that, to actually see a change on the web page that you're making. And I was always, that's how I first got into web programming, because back in the day, it was either that or you were building in C. And if you remember back then, you'd actually have to compile, link your programs. And so, making a change, you'd be waiting 40 seconds to actually see an update. And that sounds like a ridiculously short period of time, but it wasn't. So once I found web programming, I was like, oh, this is instantaneous. So for me, I found that engaging and exciting when I was a student, whatever, many years ago. I don't really understand why the students that I was teaching didn't find the similar experience. So when I found out that they were actually responding really well to the Arduino, and they actually had like a real world, something they could turn off and on, as opposed to just something showing up on the screen, that to them meant more. And maybe it's just because they live in a world where it's easy to make computer screens do all kinds of things these days. And they just were more excited to actually have that tactile change actually happen. So that's what I found was probably the most engaging sort of way to get students involved in this. Have I used Moodle to teach this stuff? That's a great question. How does it tie into Moodle, considering that I actually titled this Moodle and IoT? Moodle, I'm kind of more thinking of the future when I talk about that, and I probably should have changed my title slides for that. I think in the future we could use IoT and tie it more directly into an LMS, such as Moodle. So where I'm thinking of going with that is, I think that somewhere down the line we could take something like this. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. This is the garden sensor again. So I teach at a technical college, vocational college, and one of the ones that one of the programs I used to teach at the college I was at was landscaping. So that's where I originally thought, this is the perfect marriage. If you actually could take one of these, and they would actually do landscaping, physical, actual, real landscaping in the gardens around the college. So they would actually, I was thinking they could actually set these up, and if you could actually turn off and on lesson plans based on the actual real soil conditions. So whether it's a lesson or even like an activity or a topic section inside your Moodle, if you can have something where the conditional, tap into that conditional restriction access restrictions based upon an actual real world signal, such as the tap into the APIs for this device, you can turn off and on whether these sections are seen or not seen. And I think that would be a brilliant way to take your Moodle and tap it into what is actual real world. I think we're a little ways off with that, and I think that there's just going to be some work on the APIs and making them more accessible for that. I have looked into it in the past, and it's one of those things that a lot of people haven't really started to look at. But I think that not only is this going to be something fun and cool to do, I think that at some point in time, Moodle or whatever LMS out there, they're going to actually start looking into this, and they're going to say, how do we actually attach real world what we're getting out of the sensors and attach it to a lesson plan. In terms of how I've used Moodle to teach this stuff, yeah, the typical, use the videos, build in the videos into the lesson plans, and that sort of thing. So nothing. Well, I wouldn't say nothing innovative, but I'm sure that you guys can all kind of figure out how you would do that. Yes, exciting new area for EDU. Yeah, physical ways of interacting with Moodle. I think that would be really cool. I can come up with a whole lot of other examples. I do think that there is a way to hack output from Moodle into an IoT device if you wanted to display. For instance, if we wanted to turn off and on colors on this, you could actually tap into the RSS feed. So something like a forum, you can actually turn on the RSS feed, and then you'd use your whatever you want, your light blue bean or your particle photon, and have that actually read the RSS feed. And depending upon, if a message is less than 2 minutes old, make this flash red, or something like that. You could actually easily tap that together using the RSS feed. I've done that in the past. I used Python as the language that would actually, on my computer, monitor the RSS feed, and then from my computer, it would actually connect to, using Bluetooth, to my light blue bean, and then my light blue bean would flash the lights on my tie based upon these RSS feeds. That was great, but it was kind of like a clunky, hacked together demo proof of concept, in that I'd always have to be close to my actual computer to get that all to work. And in the end, it's not really practical, because all it's doing is showing me that there's a new message on the forum. And it's like, well, did I need my tie to light up to tell me that? Probably not. But yeah, I do think you could also do output of activity on Moodle being displayed physically. But to me, that's less exciting. I mean, it's still fun, but I don't see it as super practical. Make the ring display as the course progress. You could do that. You could actually build an entire wall of even old school. I've got some. What are those called? Pixie tubes, and you could actually build like an old school sort of like countdown for whatever. Even like this clock showing you the time left in the quiz. Although that might be kind of bad to have this old style clock just ticking down as students are trying to do their quiz. It'd be fun. It'd be cool. As a sadistic teacher, I'd be like, oh yes, I'm getting them back for all the hassles they've given me. But in terms of actually, like, am I helping them to learn? Probably not a good idea.
Hey
Where are
Scott,
we
Shane
at?
here. Just
Yes,
thought
Shane.
I'll jump in and just because we're running a bit short of time, and just to say just to
Yes.
thank you for that presentation and thank you for the conversation with everybody, and really appreciate your time. And I'm reasonably sure that at least some of your bosses at your work would be quite happy if you take time off because they're nerdy people too. So, but thank you for your time and much
Oh,
appreciated.
thank you very much. And it was my honor to be kicking off iMoot Mini Moot this year. So, thank you very much, everybody, for watching.